You think you know power. You think a uniform gives you the right to play God. Beatrice Vance thought so. She looked at a 19-year-old girl in a grey hoodie, saw the colour of her skin, and decided she didn't belong in first class. She didn't just deny her boarding. She ripped her ticket into pieces right in front of a stunned crowd at JFK. Beatrice thought she was taking out the trash. She didn't realize she was declaring war on the daughter of the man who signs her paychecks. This isn't just a story about a bad flight attendant. It's a story about the brutal, beautiful crash landing of a career. Buckle up. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 was thick with the scent of stale coffee and expensive perfume. It was the holiday rush, a chaotic symphony of rolling luggage wheels, crying toddlers, and the incessant, soulless drone of PA announcements. For most people, this was purgatory. For Chloe Kensington, it was just Tuesday. Chloe adjusted the oversized hood of her vintage charcoal sweatshirt, pulling it lower over her noise-cancelling headphones. She wasn't trying to hide. She was just trying to exist. At 19, she had the eyes of someone who had seen too many boardrooms and not enough playgrounds. She clutched her passport and a crisp printed boarding pass in her right hand. She bypassed the snaking serpentine line of the economy check-in, a mass of humanity that looked more like a refugee crisis than a travel queue, and headed straight for the crimson carpet of the Ascendia Global First Class Priority Lane. The carpet was empty save for a single podium and the woman standing behind it. Beatrice Vance. Beatrice was a woman who wore her uniform like a weapon. Her scarf was tied with a geometric precision that suggested she strangled fun for a living. Her blonde hair was lacquered into a helmet of hairspray that could likely withstand a Category 5 hurricane. Her name tag glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights, sitting just above a pin that read 20 years of service. She was typing furiously on her terminal as Chloe approached, not bothering to look up until Chloe cleared her throat. "Excuse me," Chloe said, her voice soft but steady. Beatrice stopped typing. She didn't lift her head immediately. Instead, she performed a slow, theatrical scan, starting at Chloe's scuffed white sneakers, traveling up the baggy sweatpants, lingering with disdain on the charcoal hoodie, and finally landing on Chloe's face. Beatrice's eyes were cold, the color of dirty ice. "The economy line," Beatrice said, pointing a manicured finger toward the chaotic mob to her left without making eye contact, "is back there. You need to wait for your zone number to be called." "I'm not in economy," Chloe said, stepping onto the red carpet. "I'm in first." Beatrice let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of a dry twig snapping. She finally looked Chloe in the eye. Her lips pursed into a thin line of annoyance. "Sweetheart," Beatrice said the term, dripping with condescension. "This is Ascendia Global. Our first-class suites cost more than most people's cars. Please do not waste my time. I have Diamond status members to attend to." "I'm a member," Chloe replied. She didn't raise her voice. She had been taught by the best that true power never yells. "If you scan my pass, you'll see." She extended her hand, offering the boarding pass. Beatrice didn't take it. She leaned over the podium, her perfume, something floral and overpowering like a funeral parlor, wafting into Chloe's space. "I don't need to scan it to know you're in the wrong place," Beatrice hissed, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We get this all the time. People trying to sneak into the priority lane to skip the queue. It's tacky, and frankly, looking at you, it's obvious." Chloe felt a familiar heat rise in her chest, but she tamped it down. "Looking at me. You look like you're going to a rap concert, not a business meeting in London." Beatrice scoffed. "Now back of the line, before I call security and have you removed for creating a disturbance." "I'm not creating a disturbance," Chloe said, her grip tightening on her passport. "I'm trying to board my flight. Flight AG88 to Heathrow. Seat 1A. Beatrice froze. Seat 1A. That was the owner's suite. It was rarely booked, usually reserved for diplomats, A-list celebrities or high-ranking corporate officers. "Seat 1A. Beatrice repeated, her eyes narrowing. "Now I know you're lying. That seat is restricted. Show me that ticket." She snatched the paper from Chloe's hand with a violence that made a nearby businessman look up from his phone. Beatrice scanned the paper with her eyes, not the machine. She saw the name Kensington C. She saw the status VIP Owner Protocol. But Beatrice Vance didn't see reality. She saw what her prejudice wanted her to see. She saw a fraud, a forgery. "Where did you get this?" Beatrice demanded, her voice rising, now attracting attention. "Did you print this off the internet? This is a fake, a system glitch." "It's not a fake," Chloe said calmly. "Check the computer." "I don't need to check the computer for a fraud," Beatrice shouted. "You think you can just walk in here dressed like a thug and demand the most expensive seat on the plane? Who do you think you are?" The crowd was watching now. Phones were coming out. The businessman in the suit stepped closer, looking concerned. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. "Yes," Beatrice snapped, turning to the man with a sudden jarring smile. "Just a security issue, sir. Someone trying to board with a fraudulent ticket. I'm handling it." She turned back to Chloe, her smile vanishing instantly. "I'm going to give you one chance to walk away," Beatrice said. "Turn around, leave the terminal, and I won't call the police." "I'm not leaving," Chloe said. "I have a flight to catch." Beatrice's face turned a shade of mottled red. She wasn't used to defiance. She was used to fear. "Fine," Beatrice said. "You want to play games? Let's play." The air in the terminal seemed to vanish, sucked out by the sheer audacity of what happened next. Beatrice held the boarding pass, the heavy premium cardstock reserved for first class, up to Chloe's face. "This," Beatrice spat, "is trash." And then she ripped it. The sound was sharp and distinctive. She tore it once down the middle. Then she put the two halves together and tore them again. She dropped the confetti-like pieces onto the pristine red carpet at Chloe's feet. "There," Beatrice said, dusting her hands off as if she had just handled something filthy. "Now you have no ticket, which means you are loitering. Security." She waved frantically at two TSA officers standing near the metal detectors about 50 feet away. Chloe stood motionless. She looked down at the pieces of paper on the floor. Her name, Kensington, was bisected, lying in ruin on the nylon fibers. A silence fell over the immediate area. The businessman who had intervened looked horrified. A mother in the economy line covered her mouth. A group of teenagers near the window were filming their phones held high, capturing every pixel of Beatrice's smug victory. Chloe slowly lifted her head. For the first time, the calm mask slipped just a fraction. Her eyes were dark, burning with a cold, terrifying intelligence. "You shouldn't have done that," Chloe said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence it carried like a gunshot. "I do my job," Beatrice sneered, crossing her arms. "I keep this airline respectable. We don't need people like you ruining the image of Ascendia Global." "People like me," Chloe repeated. "Scammers," Beatrice said quickly, though the subtext hung heavy in the air. "Now move. The officers are coming." The two TSA agents, burly men, looking tired and overworked, jogged over. "What's the issue, Beatrice?" one of them asked. He clearly knew her. Everyone knew Beatrice. She was the gatekeeper of Terminal 4, the Dragon at the door. This passenger refused to leave the priority lane, Beatrice said, her voice transforming instantly into that of a victim. She presented a fraudulent ticket, became aggressive when I confronted her, and is now refusing to vacate the area. I feel threatened. The officer turned to Chloe. Miss, you need to step back. I have a flight, Chloe said. She ripped up my ticket. The officer looked at the floor. He saw the pieces. He looked back at Beatrice. You ripped her ticket? He asked, a frown creasing his forehead. It was a fake, Beatrice insisted shrilly. It's standard protocol to destroy fraudulent documents to prevent reuse. It wasn't fake, Chloe said. She reached into her hoodie pocket. He's reaching, Beatrice shrieked, jumping back. She has a weapon. The officer's hands went to their belts. Hands, let me see your hands. Chloe froze. She moved her hand very slowly, pulling out a sleek black smartphone. It wasn't a weapon. It was the latest model, encased in a simple leather cover. I'm calling the person who bought the ticket, Chloe said, unlocking the screen. Oh, go ahead, Beatrice laughed, mocking her. Call your daddy. Tell him you didn't get away with it. Tell him the big bad flight attendant did her job. Chloe ignored her. She tapped a contact. The name on the screen was just one word, Dad. She put the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice. Chloe. A deep, gravelly voice answered. The sound quality was crystal clear. Hey, Dad, Chloe said, her eyes locked on Beatrice. Everything all right? You should be boarding by now. The pilot, Captain Sterling, texted me saying, you haven't shown up on the manifest yet. I'm at the gate, Chloe said. But there's a problem. The gate agent, Beatrice Vance. Beatrice's eyes widened slightly when she heard her own name. She wouldn't let me board, Chloe continued. She said my ticket was fake because of how I look. And then she ripped it up. She threw it on the floor. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence so heavy it felt like the pressure drop before a storm. She did what? The voice on the phone was no longer warm. It was ice cold. It was the voice that had acquired 3 airlines and dismantled a union in a single afternoon. She ripped up the ticket, Dad. She called security. She said I was ruining the image of Ascendia. Put her on, the voice commanded. Chloe pulled the phone away from her ear and held it out to Beatrice. He wants to talk to you, Chloe said. Beatrice rolled her eyes. She stepped forward, confident in her authority. Confident that whoever was on the other end was just some angry father she could bully into submission. Listen to me. Beatrice snapped into the phone without even putting it to her ear, holding it like a dirty diaper. Your daughter is causing a scene. She has no ticket. If you don't tell her to leave right now, she is going to be arrested. Look at the name on the boarding pass on the floor. The voice boomed from the speaker. Beatrice paused. She looked down. She saw the torn fragment. Kensing. I don't care about the name, Beatrice shouted. I care about the rules. My name, the voice thundered, is Richard Kensington. I own the plane you are standing in front of. I own the uniform you are wearing. And I own the building you are standing in. Beatrice went still. Richard Kensington, the CEO of Ascendia Global, the man whose face was on the cover of the in-flight magazine, currently sitting in the seat pocket of every plane in the fleet. Beatrice stammered. Her face went pale, the red draining away instantly. Mr. Kensington. You ripped up my daughter's ticket, Richard said. His voice was terrifyingly calm now. Put my daughter back on the phone. Now. Beatrice's hand trembled as she handed the phone back to Chloe. She felt like she was going to vomit. The TSA agents were exchanging nervous glances. The businessman was smirking. Chloe put the phone back to her ear. "Yeah, Dad." "Get on the plane, Chloe. I'm making a call to the captain. Beatrice will let you through. If she speaks one more word to you, one single word, she won't just lose her job. She'll lose everything." "Okay," Chloe said. "See you in London." She hung up. The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was the silence of a predator, realizing it had just bitten a dinosaur. I need to reprint your pass," Beatrice whispered. Her voice was shaking so hard she could barely get the words out. "Don't bother," Chloe said. She stepped over the torn paper on the floor. "I'll use the digital app." She walked past the podium. She walked past the stunned Beatrice Vance. She walked down the jet bridge. But Beatrice wasn't done. Denial is a powerful drug. As Chloe disappeared down the tunnel, Beatrice's shock turned into a frantic, desperate panic. It couldn't be true, she told herself. It was a prank call. Someone using a voice changer. Richard Kensington doesn't have a black daughter. Beatrice Vance had a choice: accept her fate or double down. She grabbed her radio. "Captain Sterling," she said, her voice shrill. "We have a security breach. A passenger has forced her way onto the jet bridge, requesting permission to intercept." She was going to make this flight a living hell. The jet bridge was a suspended tunnel of silence, a stark contrast to the chaotic noise of the terminal. Chloe walked slowly, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the industrial carpeting. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a rhythmic drumbeat of adrenaline, but her face remained a mask of stone. She had grown up watching her father negotiate billion-dollar mergers. She knew that the moment you showed emotion was the moment you lost leverage. She reached the fuselage door. The air rushing out from the cabin smelled of recycled oxygen, expensive cologne, and warm nuts. Standing at the entrance was Nancy, the flight's purser. Nancy was the polar opposite of Beatrice. Where Beatrice was jagged edges and ice, Nancy was soft curves and warmth, a grandmotherly figure who had been flying since the days when smoking was allowed on board. "Welcome aboard, miss," Nancy said, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second as she took in Chloe's attire, the hoodie, the sweatpants. But unlike Beatrice, Nancy was a professional. She recovered instantly. "Can I see your boarding pass?" "I'm sorry," Chloe said, her voice steady. "The gate agent, she destroyed my ticket. I'm in seat 1A. Nancy's eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. 1A? The owner's suite?" "Yes. My name is Chloe Kensington." Nancy froze. She blinked once, then twice. She looked at the manifest on her tablet. Kensington. The name was highlighted in gold, a color code that meant Protocol 0, do not disturb. Offer everything, question nothing. "Oh, Miss Kensington." Nancy breathed, her demeanor shifting from professional courtesy to genuine reverence. "My apologies. We weren't expecting you to board so quietly. Usually we get a call from VIP services." "It was a last-minute decision," Chloe said, "and the gate agent, Beatrice, seemed to have trouble with it." Nancy's expression darkened slightly at the mention of the name. It was a look that said volumes. Beatrice Vance was not popular among her colleagues. "I am so sorry for any inconvenience," Nancy said, gesturing to the left. "Please, let me show you to your suite. Can I take your jacket or get you a pre-departure beverage? We have a vintage Dom Perignon chilled." "Just water, please," Chloe said. She walked into the first-class cabin. It was a realm of hushed luxury. There were only 8 suites each, a private cocoon of hand-stitched leather and walnut wood. The lighting was dim and amber, designed to soothe. Chloe reached seat 1A. It wasn't just a seat, it was a throne. It had sliding privacy doors, a personal wardrobe, and a lie-flat bed. She tossed her backpack into the overhead bin and sat down, sinking into the plush leather. She pulled her headphones down around her neck and closed her eyes, exhaling a long, shaky breath. She thought it was over. She thought she was safe. She was wrong. A commotion erupted at the front of the plane. Heavy footsteps thudded against the floor, vibrating through the cabin. "Where is she?" a voice shrieked. It was a voice that shattered the peace of the cabin like a brick through a stained glass window. Chloe opened her eyes. Beatrice Vance was storming down the aisle. She had abandoned her post at the gate. Her face was flushed a deep, blotchy crimson, her hairspray helmet slightly askew. She looked like a woman possessed. Nancy stepped into the aisle, blocking Beatrice's path. "Beatrice, what are you doing? We're about to push back." "Move, Nancy," Beatrice snapped, trying to shove past the older woman. "You have a security breach on board, a stowaway." "What are you talking about?" Nancy hissed, keeping her voice low to avoid alarming the passengers. "Miss Kensington is in her seat." "Miss Kensington?" Beatrice laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Is that what she told you? That girl is a fraud. She's a street rat who printed a fake ticket and threatened me." Every head in first class turned. In seat 2A, a man named Arthur Thorne lowered his Financial Times. Thorne was a hedge fund manager who wore suits that cost more than most people's annual rent. He looked at Beatrice, then at Chloe, his lip curling in distaste. "Is there a problem?" Thorne asked, his voice dripping with entitlement. "I paid $12,000 for silence, not a domestic dispute." "I apologize, sir," Beatrice said, smoothing her skirt and affecting a look of beleaguered authority. "This person pushed past security. She is dangerous. I am removing her." Beatrice lunged past Nancy. She marched up to seat 1A. Chloe looked up, her expression unreadable. "Get out," Beatrice commanded. She pointed to the door. "Now, before I have the marshals drag you out by your hair." "I spoke to my father," Chloe said calmly. "He spoke to you. Did you not hear him?" "I heard a man on a phone," Beatrice yelled. "Anyone can hire an actor to play daddy." "You think I'm stupid? You think I was born yesterday?" Richard Kensington is a white man from Connecticut. "Look at you. You are—" She paused, searching for a word that wouldn't get her sued, but her eyes said the slur loud and clear. "You are clearly not his daughter." "Beatrice," Nancy warned, stepping up behind her. "You are crossing a line. Check the manifest." "The manifest is wrong," Beatrice screamed, her spit flying. "She hacked it. She's a criminal. Look at her clothes. Since when does Ascendia allow hoodies in first class?" Beatrice reached out. Her hand, with its sharp, manicured nails, grabbed Chloe's arm. That was the mistake. Touching a passenger is a cardinal sin. Touching a VIP is career suicide. Touching the owner's daughter. That was signing a death warrant. Chloe recoiled, pulling her arm back. "Do not touch me." "I will touch you if I have to drag you off this plane," Beatrice roared. She grabbed Chloe again, digging her nails into the fabric of the sweatshirt, pulling hard. "Help!" Beatrice shouted to the cabin. "She's resisting! Someone help me get this criminal off the plane!" The cabin was frozen in shock, but Arthur Thorne, the man in 2A, stood up. He saw a frazzled flight attendant and a young black girl in a hoodie, and his prejudices filled in the blanks. "Enough of this," Thorne grumbled. He stepped forward, looming over Chloe. "Listen, girl, you've had your fun. Now get off the plane so the rest of us can get to London. You don't belong here." Chloe looked from Beatrice to Thorne. She was surrounded. The injustice of it was suffocating. It wasn't just the ticket anymore. It was the assumption, the collective agreement among these people that she couldn't possibly be who she said she was, simply because of how she looked. "I'm not moving," Chloe said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "Fine," Beatrice said, breathless. "Then we do this the hard way." She reached for her radio to call the police, but before she could key the mic, the cockpit door burst open. Captain James Sterling was a man cut from the cloth of old-school aviation. He had silver hair, broad shoulders, and the kind of commanding presence that made turbulence feel like a minor inconvenience. He had flown fighter jets in the Navy before joining Ascendia 30 years ago. He had seen everything. He stepped into the first-class cabin, his cap tucked under his arm, his brow furrowed in deep annoyance. "What in God's name is going on back here?" Sterling boomed. His voice didn't need to be loud to be heard. It resonated from his chest, commanding instant silence. Beatrice spun around, her face lighting up with relief. She thought the cavalry had arrived. She thought she had an ally. "Captain," she gasped, rushing toward him. "Thank goodness. We have a serious situation. A security breach. This passenger—" She pointed a trembling finger at Chloe. "She forced her way past the gate, assaulted me verbally, and refuses to leave. She's claiming to be a Kensington. It's obviously a scam." Sterling looked at Beatrice. His eyes were hard. He didn't speak immediately. He looked past her, past Arthur Thorne, who was still standing pompously in the aisle, and locked eyes with the girl in seat 1A. Sterling had flown Richard Kensington's private jet for 5 years before returning to commercial routes. He knew the family. He had attended Chloe's high school graduation. He had taught her the basics of lift and drag on a napkin when she was 10. He saw the hoodie. He saw the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. He saw the sheer exhaustion on her face. "Captain," Arthur Thorne interjected, adjusting his tie. "This employee is doing her job. This girl is delaying the flight. I suggest we have her removed immediately so we can depart." Beatrice nodded vigorously. "Mr. Thorne is right, Captain. She's a disruption. I've already called for security." Captain Sterling slowly turned his gaze back to Beatrice. The look he gave her was not one of support. It was one of profound, terrifying disappointment. "You called security?" Sterling asked quietly. "Yes. She's a trespasser. Beatrice," Sterling said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "Do you know who signs your paycheck?" Beatrice blinked. "What?" "The name on the side of this plane," Sterling said. "Ascendia. Do you know who founded it?" "Richard Kensington," Beatrice said, confused. "But what does that have to—" "And do you know," Sterling interrupted, taking a step closer to her, invading her personal space, "who sits at his dinner table every Sunday?" Beatrice's mouth opened, but no sound came out. A cold dread began to seep into her bones. The certainty she had felt only moments ago was beginning to fracture. Sterling walked past her. He ignored Arthur Thorne, completely brushing past the millionaire as if he were a piece of furniture. He stopped in front of seat 1A. The entire cabin held its breath. Beatrice watched, waiting for the captain to yell, waiting for him to grab the girl. Instead, Captain James Sterling, a man who saluted admirals and presidents bent at the waist. He bowed. It was a slight, respectful bow, but it was unmistakable. "Miss Kensington," Sterling said, his tone softening into something paternal and kind. "I am deeply sorry for this. I didn't realize you were on board. until your father called me directly on the satellite link 2 minutes ago." The silence in the cabin was absolute. It was heavy, thick, and suffocating. Arthur Thorne's jaw dropped. He slowly sat back down in his seat, shrinking into the leather, suddenly finding his shoes very interesting. Beatrice felt the blood drain from her face so fast it made her dizzy. The world tilted on its axis. "Miss Kensington," Father called me. The words echoed in Beatrice's mind like a death knell. "Hi, Captain Sterling." Chloe said, her voice small. "It's been a while." "Too long, Chloe," Sterling said. He stood up and turned around. The warmth was gone from his face. He looked at Beatrice like she was a stain on his uniform. "Beatrice Vance," Sterling said, "in my 30 years of flying, I have never seen such a display of incompetence, prejudice, and gross insubordination." "Captain, Beatrice stammered, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "I didn't know. She was dressed in... I thought..." "You thought," Sterling barked. "You didn't think. You looked at a young woman, and you made a judgment based on nothing but your own bias. You ripped up a valid ticket. You harassed a diamond status passenger, and you laid your hands on her. I was trying to protect the flight." Beatrice pleaded, tears of panic now springing to her eyes. "I was just doing my job." "Your job," Sterling said, his voice icy, "is to ensure the safety and comfort of our passengers. You have failed at both. You have assaulted the daughter of the CEO." "Please," Beatrice whispered. "I didn't know." "Ignorance is not a defense, Beatrice," Sterling said. "Especially not when you were told. She told you. Her father told you. You chose not to listen because you didn't like what you saw." Sterling reached for the interphone on the wall. He pressed the button for the cockpit. "First officer, this is the captain," he said into the handset, his voice amplified through the cabin speakers so everyone could hear. "Contact ground operations. Tell them we are not pushing back. Tell them we need a replacement gate agent and a replacement flight attendant immediately." Beatrice gasped. "Captain, you can't." "I have seniority. I have 20 years. "You are relieved of duty, Ms. Vance," Sterling said, hanging up the phone. "You are not flying on my plane. Not today. Not ever again." "You can't do this," Beatrice shrieked. The facade of the professional was gone. She was a cornered animal now. "You can't kick me off. I know the union rep I'll sue. This is discrimination against me." She turned to the passengers looking for support. "You saw it. You saw her provoke me." But the passengers were silent. Arthur Thorne was pretending to read his paper, holding it so high it covered his face. The others looked away, embarrassed to be near her. "Nancy," Sterling said to the purser, "escort Ms. Vance off the aircraft. If she resists, call the Port Authority police. I will have her arrested for interfering with a flight crew." Nancy nodded, her face grim. She walked over to Beatrice. "Let's go, Beatrice. Don't make it worse." "No," Beatrice screamed. She grabbed onto the back of a seat. "I'm not leaving. This is my flight. I earned this route." Chloe watched from her seat. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired. She watched this woman, who had been so powerful, so arrogant, just 10 minutes ago crumble into a sobbing, pathetic mess. "Beatrice," Chloe spoke up. Beatrice froze. She looked at the girl she had tormented. "You said I was trash," Chloe said quietly. "You said I didn't belong here. But look around. The only person who doesn't belong on this plane anymore is you." Beatrice stared at her, her mouth trembling. The truth hit her like a physical blow. She let go of the seat. Nancy took her by the elbow and guided her toward the door. Beatrice walked like a zombie, her feet dragging. As she passed the rows of first class, the passengers she had tried so hard to impress the wealthy, the elite looked at her with pity and disgust. She stepped off the plane and back into the jet bridge, the heavy door closing behind her with a definitive thud. The cabin was silent. Captain Sterling sighed and adjusted his jacket. He turned to the cabin, addressing the stunned passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for the delay and the disturbance. We will have a new crew member on board shortly, and we will be on our way to London. I thank you for your patience." He looked down at Chloe and winked. "Can I get you anything, Chloe? Maybe something from the cockpit?" Chloe smiled a genuine smile this time. "Just a safe flight, Captain." "Consider it done." Sterling returned to the cockpit. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted. The tension broke. But for Chloe, the ordeal wasn't over. Because while Beatrice was gone, the machine she was part of, the corporate structure, the union, the media, was just waking up. And Beatrice Vance wasn't the type to go down quietly. As she walked back up the jet bridge, humiliation burning her skin, she wasn't thinking about apologies. She was thinking about revenge. She pulled out her phone. She was going to spin a story that would make her the victim. She dialed a number. "Hello, Daily Mail. I have a story. I was just assaulted by a billionaire's daughter and fired for trying to stop a security breach. You're going to want to hear this." The war wasn't over. It had just moved to a different battlefield. Beatrice Vance sat on the edge of the stiff floral-patterned bed in the airport Radisson, her hands trembling as she scrolled through her phone. Outside the roar of jets taking off from JFK was a constant mocking reminder of the world she had just been ejected from. She wasn't sorry. She was furious. In her mind, the narrative had already shifted. She wasn't the aggressor. She was the victim of a corporate machine, a martyr for the working class crushed by the boot of the 1%. She had convinced herself of this lie so thoroughly that it felt like truth. She had spent the last 3 hours on the phone with Greg Salinger, a bottom-feeding journalist for a tabloid known more for lawsuits than Pulitzer Prizes. Greg was hungry for dirt on the Kensingtons. "So let me get this straight," Greg had asked, his voice scratchy over the line. "She didn't show ID, she was dressed like a gang member, and when you tried to enforce policy, the captain who used to fly for her daddy kicked you off." "Exactly," Beatrice lied, her voice cracking with practiced emotion. "I was just trying to keep the flight safe. I didn't know who she was. I just saw a suspicious passenger refusing to follow protocol, and for that, I lose my career." "It's reverse discrimination, Greg. It's because I'm a middle-aged woman, and she's a Kensington." By the time Chloe's flight touched down in Heathrow 7 hours later, the story was already live. Headline: "Terror in Terminal 4. Veteran flight attendant fired for stopping suspicious billionaire heiress." The article was a masterpiece of spin. It painted Beatrice as a hero of aviation safety, and Chloe as a spoiled, dangerous brat who had thrown a tantrum. It didn't mention the ripped ticket. It didn't mention the racial profiling. When Chloe turned her phone on at the gate in London, her notifications froze the screen. Thousands of mentions. Hate mail. Death threats. @FlySafe Patriot. Disgusting. Rich kids think they own the skies. @Justice for Beatrice. @AvGeek9tumin. Fire Captain. Sterling. He chose a VIP over safety protocols. Chloe stood in the aisle of the plane, her stomach churning. She felt the eyes of the other passengers on her, the ones who hadn't seen the incident, only the headlines. She felt small again. But Richard Kensington was not a man who played defense. Back in New York, inside the glass and steel fortress of the Ascendia Global headquarters, a war room had been assembled. Richard sat at the head of a mahogany table, staring at a massive monitor displaying the social media sentiment graph. It was a sea of angry red. "They're destroying us, sir," the VP of Public Relations said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Beatrice's story is resonating. People love an underdog. They see a 19-year-old girl in a hoodie and a veteran employee, and they pick the employee. We need to settle. Offer Beatrice a package, get her to sign an NDA, and kill the story. Richard Kensington slowly turned his head. His eyes were dark, dangerous pools. "Settle," Richard said, his voice quiet. "You want me to pay the woman who assaulted my daughter. You want me to pay the woman who humiliated her based on the color of her skin. It's cheaper than a stock price crash, sir," the VP argued. "It's ugly, but it's business." "No," Richard said. He stood up, walking to the window overlooking the Manhattan skyline. "This isn't business. This is family. And we don't need to settle. We need the truth." "The truth is her word against ours," the VP said. "Unless there were cameras." "There are always cameras," Richard said. At that exact moment across the city, in a messy bedroom in Queens, a 16-year-old boy named Tyler was waking up. He checked TikTok. He saw the hashtag #JusticeForBeatrice trending. He saw the photo of the hero flight attendant. "Wait," Tyler muttered, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "That's the lady from the airport." He grabbed his phone. He opened his camera roll. He had been filming a day-in-the-life vlog yesterday at the airport. He had been standing right next to the first-class line. He pressed play. The video was shaky at first, but the audio was crystal clear. "This is trash," Beatrice's voice screeched from the speaker. "Rip!" The sound of the ticket tearing was loud, violent. "Now you have no ticket, which means you are loitering. Security." Tyler watched the video. He saw the smug look on Beatrice's face. He saw Chloe standing there, calm, polite, holding her ground, while this woman shredded her property. Tyler didn't care about corporate stocks or PR strategies. He just knew a bully when he saw one. He hit upload. Captioned, "The hero flight attendant is a liar." Here's what really happened. Ascendia, Karen, exposed. The internet is a volatile beast. It moves like a school of fish. One sudden movement, and the entire mass changes direction instantly. Tyler's video hit 100,000 views in 10 minutes, 1 million in an hour, 10 million by lunch. The narrative didn't just shift, it snapped. The comments section under the Daily Mail article transformed from a support group for Beatrice into a digital lynch mob. @SarahJ88, OMG. She literally ripped the ticket in her face, Hanswort, fire. Beatrice, travel Dan. I've flown with this woman. She's a nightmare. Finally, someone caught her. @TruthSeeker. She lied to the press. She said Chloe was aggressive. Chloe was literally just standing there. In her hotel room, Beatrice was popping a champagne cork, celebrating her upcoming interview with Good Morning America. She poured a glass, feeling invincible. Then her phone rang. It was Greg, the reporter. "Beatrice," he said. His voice was cold. "Greg, did you see the Twitter numbers? We're winning." "We aren't winning anything," Greg snapped. "Did you know there was a video?" Beatrice froze. The glass of champagne slipped from her fingers. It hit the carpet with a dull thud, soaking the cheap rug. "What video? A kid filmed the whole thing. You ripped the ticket, Beatrice. You lied to me. You said she was aggressive. You look like a psychopath in this clip." I I can explain. Don't, Greg said. I'm killing the story, and Beatrice lose my number. I don't work with sources who perjure themselves on tape. The line went dead. Beatrice stared at the phone. Her hands started to shake violently this time. She opened TikTok. The video was everywhere. It was on every feed, every news site. Her face twisted in a snarl of hate was being memed across the globe. She wasn't a hero anymore. She was the villain of the week. And then a new notification popped up. An email. Not from a reporter. Not from a friend. From Ascendia Global Legal Department. Subject notice of immediate termination and civil action. 3 days later. The conference room on the 50th floor of the Ascendia building was cold. It was kept at a precise 68 degrees a temperature, designed to keep minds sharp and visitors uncomfortable. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of the city that Beatrice Vance used to fly over, but could never afford to touch. Beatrice sat at the long table. She was no longer wearing her uniform. She wore a beige suit that had seen better days, and she looked 10 years older than she had at the airport. Her hair was flat. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Next to her sat Barry Cohen, a strip mall injury lawyer she had hired with the last of her savings. Barry looked out of place in the sleek corporate office, his tie too wide, his suit too shiny. Across from them sat 3 people. In the center was Richard Kensington. He wore a navy suit that cost more than Beatrice's house. He didn't look angry. He looked bored, which was infinitely worse. To his right was the head of legal, a woman named Miss Chang, who had a reputation for shredding opponents like waste paper. To his left was Chloe. Chloe wore a simple blazer and jeans. She didn't look at Beatrice. She looked at a spot on the wall, her expression serene. "Let's make this quick," Richard said, not bothering with introductions. "You are here to sign the separation agreement." "Now wait just a minute," Barry the lawyer interjected, puffing out his chest. "My client was wrongfully terminated without due process. She is a victim of a viral smear campaign orchestrated by this company. We are prepared to sue for wrongful dismissal, defamation, and emotional distress. We want $50 million to walk away." Richard didn't even blink. He looked at Ms. Chang. "Show him." Ms. Chang slid a single file folder across the polished table. Barry opened it. He read the first page. His confidence faltered. He read the second page. His face went pale. He closed the folder. "What is it?" Beatrice whispered, panic rising in her throat. "Ms. Vance," Richard said, his voice smooth as silk. "That folder contains sworn affidavits from 12 other passengers who have filed complaints against you over the last 5 years. Complaints about racial profiling, complaints about rudeness, complaints that were mysteriously lost by your middle manager, who, by the way, was fired this morning." Beatrice gripped the edge of the table. That's history. You can't use that." "We also have the video," Richard continued, "which clearly shows you destroying passenger property, a federal offense, and filing a false report to the TSA. That is a felony, Ms. Vance, making a false statement to federal law enforcement." Richard leaned forward. The boredom vanished, replaced by the predator. "Here is the situation. You are going to admit that you lied. You are going to sign a statement retracting every word you said to the press. You will surrender your pension to cover the legal fees we have incurred, and you will never ever work in the aviation industry again." My pension," Beatrice gasped. "I worked 20 years for that." "That's all I have. You ripped up my daughter's ticket," Richard said, his voice dropping to a growl. "You tried to humiliate her. You tried to turn the world against her. You wanted to destroy her. I am destroying you."
"Barry, do something!"
Beatrice shrieked, grabbing her lawyer's arm. Barry pulled his arm away. He looked at the file. He looked at the billionaires across the table. He looked at the felony charges looming over his client. "Beatrice," Barry said softly, "sign the paper." "What?" "They have you on a federal crime, Beatrice. If they press charges for the false report to the TSA, you're looking at prison time. 5 years, maybe more. If you sign this, they agree not to refer the case to the FBI." Beatrice looked at Richard. There was no mercy in his eyes. She looked at Chloe. Chloe finally turned to look at her.
"Why?"
Beatrice whispered, tears streaming down her face.
"Why are you doing this? I made a mistake."
"No," Chloe said. Her voice was clear, strong. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to judge me. You chose to try and hurt me, because you thought I was weak. You thought I was nobody." Chloe stood up. "You ripped up my ticket because you thought you had power," Chloe said. "But power isn't a uniform, Beatrice. Power is character, and you have none." Beatrice slumped in her chair. The fight left her body. She was hollowed out. She reached for the pen. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold it. She signed the document. Beatrice Vance. With that signature, 20 years of work evaporated. Her retirement was gone. Her reputation was incinerated. She was 50 years old, broke and blacklisted. Richard Kensington stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "Get out of my building," he said. Beatrice stood up. She felt dizzy. She walked toward the door, her heels clicking on the marble floor. A sound that used to make her feel authoritative now just sounding lonely. She reached the elevator. She pressed the button. As the doors closed, she saw Chloe and her father standing by the window, looking out at the city. They were laughing about something. They had already forgotten her. Beatrice Vance rode the elevator down 50 floors. When the doors opened to the lobby, she stepped out onto the street. It was raining. She didn't have an umbrella. She stood on the curb, the cold water soaking into her cheap suit, washing away the last remnants of the woman she used to be. A taxi pulled up. The driver, a man of color, rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" Beatrice looked at him. She looked at the Ascendia logo on the building behind her. She looked at her empty hands. "I can't afford it," she whispered. She turned and walked toward the subway, her head bowed, disappearing into the grey, faceless crowd of the city she had once thought she was too good for. 6 months later, the winter slush of New York had turned into the humid, sticky heat of July. In a cramped, grease-stained diner in New Jersey, miles away from the gleaming towers of Manhattan, a woman wiped down a Formica counter. Her name tag, crooked and plastic, read, B. Beatrice Vance looked 20 years older than she had that day at Terminal 4. Her blonde hair, once lacquered and pristine, was now pulled back in a messy, graying bun. Her nails were short and unpolished, the skin around them red from harsh dish soap. "Hey, B!" the manager shouted from the kitchen. "Table 4 needs a refill on coffee. Move it." "Coming," Beatrice muttered, her voice rasping. She grabbed the pot. Her feet ached. Her back screamed. She was making minimum wage living in a studio apartment that smelled of mildew, and every dollar she made went to paying off the debts that had piled up after her firing. As she walked to table 4, she glanced up at the television mounted in the corner. It was tuned to a national news channel. "Breaking news," the anchor announced, Ascendia Global announces record profits and a new initiative. Beatrice froze. She couldn't look away. On the screen, standing on a stage in front of a sleek new aircraft, was Richard Kensington, and standing next to him, radiant in a sharp white suit, was Chloe. Chloe didn't look like a victim. She looked like a queen. She was speaking into a microphone, her voice confident and clear. Today, Chloe said, her smile beaming across the nation, we are launching the Open Skies Scholarship. This fund will provide full tuition and flight training for underrepresented youth who dream of careers in aviation but have been told they don't belong. We are tearing down the barriers that keep people grounded. The camera panned to the crowd. People were cheering. Captain Sterling was there, clapping proudly in the front row. Beatrice felt a physical pain in her chest. That could have been her life. She could have been on that plane traveling the world, earning her pension, retiring in comfort. Instead, she was here. Poured coffee for a trucker who didn't even look at her. "Hey, lady," the trucker grunted. "You gonna pour that or just stare at the TV?" Beatrice snapped back to reality. "Sorry," she whispered. She poured the coffee. Her hand shook, spilling a few drops on the table. "Watch it," the man snapped. "Can't you do anything right?" Beatrice looked at him. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him she used to serve champagne to diplomats. She wanted to tell him she used to have power. But she didn't. She couldn't. She grabbed a rag and wiped up the spill. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, lowering her head. "It won't happen again." She walked back to the counter and looked at the screen one last time. Chloe was cutting a ribbon surrounded by smiling future pilots. The headline on the screen read, "The future of flight is for everyone." Beatrice turned away. She walked into the kitchen to scrape leftover eggs off a plate. The noise of the diner swallowed her whole. She had tried to make Chloe invisible. Instead, she had erased herself. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the brutal reality of karma. Beatrice Vance thought her uniform made her untouchable. She thought she could judge a book by its cover and tear a young girl's dignity to shreds just because she felt like it. But she learned the hard way that when you try to fly above people by pushing them down, you eventually run out of fuel. Beatrice lost her career, her reputation, and her future, all because she couldn't show a little basic respect. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Beatrice's punishment fit the crime? Was losing her pension too harsh? Or was it exactly what she deserved for 20 years of bullying? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder to treat people with kindness. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.